Hello and welcome to Untier Talk. It's the series where we talk about PU because we have no lives. And when I say we, I don't just mean my normal co-host, Hajad. We are also joined today by other British PU Council member, Taskr.
Hello, people. PU people.
Yep, you can tell he's not Hajad because he has a mildly different British accent.
Yeah, he's northern, I'm southern.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around. Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we seem to have hit another one of those little in-between episodes where it seemed like things would be mostly resolved and interesting to talk about, but right as of this recording, the TD putting PU in Slam Maybe thing has not been resolved. So if that happens like Monday and you're wondering why we're not talking about it, that's why we record these on Sunday. So in the meantime, we're going to talk more about the metagame. Because, yay, PU metagame. Yeah, well, specifically the very interesting VR noms are just that people have been discussing Phariseed as a potential new S rank and Girder as a potential new S rank, and I think we all definitely stand on the same ground on the Girder nomination. So perhaps we can start there and just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
I know, Hajad, I know where you stand. Taskr, how do you feel about Girder? I think I know how you feel, but I'm not entirely certain.
I feel like it's definitely not an S rank mon. Like, I understand some of the points that were made about Gerda, like moving up to S, like being good with like healing wish and Mesprit and all that, but it's got so many like checks and counters. It's like it's a good mon, obviously, but I don't see it at the level that Mesprit or Skuntank is.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, like I think Gerda as a Pokemon has fundamental problems. Like having a bulk up Pokemon with very little special defense is just kind of a bit weird. It's obviously it has enough special defense to tank a good few hits, but as well as the usual suspects that check Gerda, so like your Mesprits, your Mashanas, those type of Pokemon. You also have the added like safety net just in case you don't have one of those Pokemon of using a special breaker, and then that equally could check Gerda. So something like a Spexalolan Executor or any special breaker, to be honest, that has a moderately high amount of special attack.
It's not Aurora.
Can break through Gerda. Yeah, that's not Aurora, obviously. So I mean, it's one of those. It's one of those weird limbo Pokemon. I'd say it's really, really good at the moment. I'd say it's up there in terms of the A plus rank Pokemon, but to call it S rank would mean like, when you're building a team, your team would feel worse without Gerda, or one of these.
I don't know about that. Like I think S rank is more if you're building a team, then Girder is one of the top things you have to consider, both using and facing. And it's more of a taking this into account with all your sets and mons. But I don't think that S rank is ever you have to use it in PU. Archeops is not like that. I don't think Skuntank is like that either.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Like, but if you look at the two sample S rank mons that we have Mesprit and Skuntank, both of which fit onto basically every single type of team ever.
Yeah.
So like Gerda, you can't really make that same argument for. Like Gerda struggles to be like it struggles on like offensive teams because it does have that like slow paced and letting in of like special wall breakers. So it doesn't really fit the offense archetype. It mainly finds its way onto balanced teams that really want to punish other balanced teams for using like Mesprit plus Spiritomb as their Gerda check, for example. I feel like that's where it's in its element.
Mm-hmm.
And considering that's like the most of the meta is like that, I feel like it's a really good Pokemon, but it's not like one of those, not like Mesprit or Skuntank in that sense.
Yeah, and I think to round this off, I'll add. So basically, I've been running a team recently. It's got a Mesprit and it's got a Sensu, and those are my main girder checks. Mesprit and Sensu, solid checks, but it can pretty freely, click knockoff. Neither of them necessarily loves taking knockoff. There's definitely risk involved. I've lost to girders. I've also beat girder teams, but never once have I felt like I don't have enough of a way to handle girder despite running the 2 checks. And to me, I think that's the big difference. The way the nomination describes it is that you can be running these girder sort of checks, but they're just not good enough. These they kind of suck and they'll get chipped and weakened and pursuit trapped and whatnot, and you just don't have enough to handle it. But I've never felt like I don't have enough to handle girder. I felt like it's a very good Pokemon, but I've never felt like it crosses the line to being too unfair, too problematic, too much of a run a different coverage move, anything like that. A strong, dangerous mon you have to play carefully around, but that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Just doesn't get up to the S rank standard.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. If you look at, I'd say that the meta has adapted a little bit. If you look at Gerda as a Pokemon, so on your team, for example, you're probably running a Sub-Carmine Sensu. So it's some teams that I've seen, and especially it's becoming popular recently, have been running a Carmine defensive or a Courier Sensu.
Yeah, there's also that, which I could totally be in. That would handle girder even better.
Yeah, that's one of the ways the meta has adapted per se to deal with girder, and I feel like if that trend continues, girder will kind of fall off a little bit, but it's still up there. It's still an A+ rank quite easily. So.
Yeah, and I should say I do think just very quickly the defensive Roost, Calm Mind, Sensu, and Pom Pom sets are actually both incredibly annoying in this metagame. Definitely something teams should take into consideration. I think they just both kind of really mess with balanced teams since we've lost Archeops. Definitely, if you haven't seen or used them, definitely take them into account. They're annoying as hell. Anyway.
They're really good.
Yeah,
that's true. My match versus UHR did not seasonal.
Taskr, you might want to turn up your mic a little bit. I can only do so much from this end.
Sorry. I'll just speak a bit louder.
Yeah, it works.
So yeah, what I was saying is that my match versus HR in seasonal that kind of carried me through that match, and that's the only one I won.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, didn't I run out of charge beams on that one?
Yeah.
Down for us. Yeah, that was a crazy match. That was an intense match.
Anyway, speaking of Pokemon that are really good but don't quite deserve S rank, that's pretty much where I fall on Ferroseed, although I do find it a much closer nom than Girder. Ferroseed is the other Pokemon people are saying maybe it should be S rank, and obviously Ferroseed is a really good Pokemon. I don't think anyone's denying that spikes are great. It's super splashable. Okay, when I say I don't think anyone's denying, I think Katut actually did say he disagreed with all this in his response post, but other than that, it's very splashable, spikes are very good, checks a lot of stuff, all that good stuff. But I don't think Ferroseed does its role as exceptionally as either Skuntank or Mesprit. I think it checks things really well, but it is absolutely something that is accepted, that teams are prepared for and are ready to wear it down and break through. A lot of the mons that it checks, the random birds like Swanna and Sensu, or the normal types like Kangaskhan and Stoutland aren't just absolutely stopped by it. You can't just slap it on and be like, yeah, I'm not going to have a problem with Stoutland. It doesn't quite just hard wall things the way that I think it would need to really be that S rank. It doesn't shut things down or just absolutely warp the meta to that extent, and I don't think we're that dominated by spikes either. Spikes are good, they're just not that good.
I've seen whenever I use Ferroseed, I always think it's 50% less good if the opponent has a grass type, just because you can't leech recover, and as you say, a lot of things. It doesn't actually wall a lot of things indefinitely. Like Caracosta's now running all out pummeling. Like you've got Firefang on Lycan Rock. It can't really check Auroras, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, if you put into case the normal types, even the birds to an extent as well. Like Kangaskhan, I've seen they've been running more like power up punch plus hammer arm combinations and fire punch. Yeah, fire punch is something that you can see. Stoutland obviously has superpower, and that's not so you don't really want to be switching Ferroseed in like constantly as your like main switching. On the birds, the defensive fat birds that we were talking about, like the defensive Sensu set, that beats Ferroseed 1v1 like easily. Swanna has like supersonic sky strike into hurricane. That does a lot. It's like it's one of those it's one of those Pokemon where if you give it 3 turns, then yes, it's going to do work. But like, what Pokemon doesn't?
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's so hard with noms like these, but the S rank definitely has a bit to do with feel, and I don't feel like Ferroseed is dominating the meta to the extent that Archeops or Mesprit or Skuntank or even Magmortar. I don't think it's as dominant as Aurorus. I think it's about as good as Clefairy. It just fits well in A+, and that's really
As
the
a
best.
defensive Pokemon, it's really good. As a defensive Pokemon on balanced teams, it's like a godsend because you have so much roll compression in one slot, and the fact that it doesn't lose momentum like instantly every time you use it is like amazing. It's a really good Pokemon, but it's not warping any builds or like it's not stressing like people into using like things that they wouldn't normally be using too much. So
I think, like,
I would.
We are kind of adapting. Like, I see most of my teams when I'm building now, and I feel like I need a grass type or like a Lurantis or something like that, just because I get just like feral just leeches and just covers just dead obnoxiously. But apart from that, I get what you mean.
And that's arguably like a point in its favor that it forces you to run grass types or HP fire or whatever. And that was brought up in the post, I'm pretty sure, but I don't think it's as huge of an adaptation that's really like crippling Pokemon or teams to handle it. It's not something that really breaks you down to handle it. It's something that you take into account, but without like really putting your team through the ringer to make sure that you can check it and remove and all that.
Yeah, not to mention like it's forced into using or its main offensive pressure comes from like a 58 base attack, no investment gyro ball. So it's like it's not got the greatest offensive pressure either. So like as long as you can find a way to work around Leech Seed, as long as you can find a way to like work around Leech Seed, you should be alright versus it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So, there's other like rapid fire VR noms. I don't, some of them are interesting, some of them are less interesting. But to me, one thing I wanted to personally hit on was the number of nominations that are kind of just, I haven't seen a lot of this, let's drop it. And those are always a thing to an extent. And it makes sense to a point. Like we had Shiftery in B+, and nobody was using it. That's a big deal. But on this slate, for things that I haven't really seen much, let's drop it. Carbink is slated to go down because, who does that? Shiftery was nominated to drop. Floatzel, Alolan Persian, Zebstrika. I believe that was all of them, and I really don't know about some of these noms. Like personally, I having actually used Alolan Persian recently, I think it's pretty awesome. Floatzel, I think, is great. Like Floatzel. Carbink is niche, and you have to make it work, but I really don't think it should be dropping more than one sub-rank at most. Things like that definitely concern me about the recent nominations. I feel like there's less less of a I really am familiar with this, and more of a looking at the VR. This doesn't feel right to me because I haven't really seen or tried this thing.
Yeah, I understand some of the ones like Chat Out Tournament, Grumpig Tournament, and stuff like that. Because like,
Well, yeah, we've been discussing those like within council for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chatot is awful. I'm sorry, that thing is awful. I hate it so much. It's literally
used it ever.
It's literally like it was. You could justify it before Spiritomb, but now you have a Spiritomb in the meta. It's like how do you even like find a way to fit it on a team where it doesn't just get pursuit trapped by Spiritomb?
I think in like Oras there was a lot less amount of ghost types in the tier, but like right now 100%. We have a ton of ghost types, and it's like you just can't freely click Boom Burst.
Yeah. Also in Oras we had our main steel types just didn't have any special defense. Just in general, like we had Mawile and we had Bronzor, and they were like the main boys, and Clang as well. I think
Probopass.
Those are like the main. Oh yeah, and that. But Probopass, those Pokemon like steel types, they don't really get usage in PU just in general. Like Ferroseed is the first steel type we've ever had where it's like getting a solid amount of usage.
Well, don't forget Wormagoat Trash.
Yeah, that thing.
But yeah, I should say just briefly for context. Well, actually, I guess the VR vote will be out by the time this goes up. But within the council slate, there's Grumpig from D to Unranked, there's Chatot from D to Unranked, and one other D ranked. What was it?
It was Cacturn.
Oh yeah, Cacturn. Okay, so yeah, those were put down to be unranked, despite the fact that they weren't brought up in the thread. Anyway, go back to what you were saying. Sorry, just.
Yeah, I mean, like, Chatot also has that problem, but you can make also that same argument for Grumpig as well. Like, Grumpig has struggled so much in a meta field with Skuntank and Spiritomb. I just don't see, like, even with Mesprit, Grumpig really struggles to, like, not take a million or, like, not relieve momentum to a Mesprit, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for Auroras, and that's about it.
Yeah, I should say, like, I do think they're 10 times weaker than Cacturn too. It's also on the chopping block, but despite that, it's still way better than fucking Chatot.
I say you can justify Cacturn because of the offensive spike set, yeah. Because like offensive spikes Cacturn is it's not Ferroseed in terms of like how much you can like wall stuff or in that sense. It's just a spiker that maintains offensive pressure, and I feel like that's something that that PU doesn't really have. So I feel like it can. I'm leaning more on the side of keep Cacturn in D. It's probably worth it. But the other two
used like Spiky Shield, which is like good for like Force and Primate. Like when Primate comes in, you U-turn. Spike Shield. Like,
oh yeah, and then
yeah.
Coverage.
I don't know. It just feels like it gets more offensively pressured than it actually does offensive pressure. Like other than Spiritomb, there are and like Spiritomb and Gastrodon. Like everything else kills Cacturn. It just doesn't really get to do much, and it's not like most teams like, oh god, I'm facing a Cacturn which I've never seen before and I can't switch into it. It's only like, oh hey, I've never seen a Cacturn, but it's okay because I'm running a Skuntank or a Clefairy or whatever. It's just not. It's not scary. There's no scare. And teams are ready for spikes too. I think it's annoying, but it's just not.
Yeah. It's got you can pressure.
I'm very loquacious today.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those Pokemon where it has a really powerful Sucker Punch, like a was it 115 attack, Life Orb, Adamant Sucker Punch. That's your main way of preventing like something to come in and just pressure you offensively constantly. I think obviously it has those issues that you were mentioning, but you know, that's part and parcel with a D rank Pokemon. It's not going to be, you know, dominating matchups like other Pokemon higher up the ranks would.
Yeah.
Not
At least it
one
had.
of the.
Go on.
Sorry, I'm gonna change topic a little bit, but it's one of the noms that was kind of torn on was Kangaskhan from A minus to A, and I was debating this for a while, and I think it's better than a lot of noms that are in A minus at the minute, but like I don't think it. I think it kind of should be in limbo between the two. But I just wanted to get a bit.
Yeah, no, I think Kangaskhan should be in. It's like it's one of those Pokemon where depending on how other Pokemon perform in the meta, it either rises or falls. So if you remember back in early Sun and Moon, when there was a lot of controversy around like Toxic Spikes and Wheezing, Kangaskhan used to be really, really good then. And since then, when we got loads of T-Spikes absorbers, it kind of fell off. And now that we've lost those T-Spikes absorbers and defoggers like Altaria, it's come back up again. Um, it's one of those Pokemon where it's like, if you partner with Ferroseed, Wheezing, it's really, really strong. And I think for now, at least, I can see it in A rank, mainly because like even like the full on counter stuff like Regirock and Ferroseed, like Kangaskhan has ways around those.
Well, yeah, I hesitate calling them full on counters when all out pummeling is the quite good set at the moment.
Yeah, like full on counters, quotation marks.
Yeah.
It's got ways around things, and I feel like people they get sort of in a routine of using Silk Scarf, Double Edge with Earthquake, and it's kind of a bit, you're not really utilizing the blessed coverage set that this thing has. I feel like if people began to be a bit more like diverse with the set, it's definitely worth the A+ rank, or A rank.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really like Power Up Punch because it just gives it that bit more strength to like muscle past stuff like.
Yeah, I definitely think Power Up Punch is the best set.
Yeah, like a Power Up Punch with Hammer Arm, is it? Is that the set that people are using now?
I don't like Hammer Arm. I don't know. It's like Hammer Arm is like just run a Z move. It's Hammer Arm's so eh.
Well, I was thinking like Power Up Punch with Z Hammer Arm, not so much Hammer Arm itself on its own.
Mm. Anyway, are there any other noms? Because I think Kangaskhan we basically hit like it's in between. It really depends on like the metagame and how you personally feel. It's hard to parse out. Are there any other noms you guys want to hit up on specifically before we wrap up though?
Yeah, just quickly the Zeb Striker, Alolan Persian, and Floatzel noms. Those the speed control noms.
Yeah.
I like to group them as that. Those things, I feel like they're okay as Pokemon, but they're not really any good at the moment. Speed control isn't really something that, or like overall speed control isn't really something that you're looking for.
I don't think Floatzel and Alolan Persian are defined by speed control. It's not just that. I think they're just good enough Pokemon on their own right that they don't need to drop. I see Zebstrika is literally just speed control, but Alolan Persian with its whole parting shot and just annoying utility. Floatzel is a genuinely annoying offensive mon, like strong wall breaker. I think speed control is a bit too reductive for those two, to be honest.
Yeah, I think with Alolan Persian, as you said, and Floatzel, I feel like those Pokemon are quite underexplored in the meta. Like, I've seen a Floatzel a few times, but I've hardly ever seen an Alolan Persian. I have not seen a Zebstrika this generation. I'll be honest. I think that Pokemon, like as a fundamental like Pokemon, is just flawed, like to hell. But
I think the only reason people used it was because of Archeops and like outspeed it naturally. But
yeah,
stuff like
now
it's like a special. Like if you want an electric type, you're gonna use like
Scarf Manectric.
Or like Manectric,
Yeah. But those are the only two things I was looking for. Well, I was kind of I wasn't really happy with the Zebstrika. Well, where Zebstrika was in the meta, so I think that it's important for that thing to drop It's not useful at all.
I guess the
Without
Jinx
the consent.
mom is kind of interesting, but I don't agree with the Dragon.
What?
No.
I don't think anyone's going to be able to hear what you just said, Taskr.
I think the Jinx mom was kind of interesting, but I don't really agree with the Dragon. I still think it's a big threat that like people are, like it's not as much usage lately as it did like at the start of like or like at the end of like exhibition type phase. But it's still a big threat, and even though like people have adapted with like Scarto Kamaru and like actually using ice resists, I still think it's like not unexplored but underrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I unless you have anything else, I think we've pretty much
everything.
Yeah, all this stuff we were specifically interested in, and this actually went kind of long,
sure.
which is fine. So thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully next week, I can't wait to be able to talk about core meta stuff. Even if we don't get in, it's just definitely to me the most interesting thing about PO at the moment is where's it gonna go and what's happening, and less so the meta. But yeah, thanks for listening in, Taskr. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you guys next time.